We'll now move to our presentation. The man with the biggest book in the room. A presentation by Public Works Director, Mr. Armando Gutierrez, regarding the street program.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to give a quick presentation. I've done this many times before.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to give it, I guess, for the benefit of the new council members. Back in December of 2016, I gathered all the information that the staff, engineering staff, had gathered when they walked the streets. Every street in the city was walked and was rated in accordance with the plan that was put together by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It was a rating scale of 1 to 10 that lists the streets, the condition of the streets. And in our case, 1 was a street that was in excellent condition, down to number 10, a street that was in the worst condition. So I took all the information that was gathered by the staff and I organized it and put it together in a sensible way that we can understand and be able to determine what is the cost of repairs and the cost of maintenance of those streets. And in doing so, I put together this particular plan, which is really the inventory of the streets. What I discovered is the city has approximately 340 linear miles of streets. Of that, 2% of the streets is in excellent condition. 33% of those streets is in good condition. 18% of the streets are in fair condition. 25% of the streets are in poor condition, and 23% are in real bad or dilapidated, failed condition. When you look at it, we're talking about 48% of the city streets either being in a poor or failed condition. That's very close to 50%. 50% of the city streets are in a poor and failed condition. The next thing that I also notice is that roughly 1/3 of the streets are in District 1 and another 1/3 of the streets are in District 4. District 2 has about 15% of the streets and District 3 has about 17% of the streets. I then looked at it, rating the streets as excellent, good, fair, poor. What type of report or what type of maintenance will be required? And obviously, a street that's in the poor, well, I'll say failed condition, there's only one choice, and that's to reconstruct the street. You got to tear it out and start scratch from the bottom. Streets that are in poor condition, well, you might be able to salvage some of them by doing some milling, removing the surface and repaving the street, doing some patching, what we call point repairs. You might have some bad spots in the street where you might just do a spot rather than do the whole street, do some point repairs, and then you repave it. You remove the existing asphalt and repave the streets. Streets that are in fair condition, you might get away with just doing an overlay or a milling overlay. Streets that are in good condition, well, they're in good condition and you want to keep them that way, so you do some preventive maintenance, either by doing some seal coating, some crack sealing, do something to keep the street in that condition. And streets that are in excellent condition, well, you just monitor them. Make sure that the minute that you start seeing some cracks, some failures, you take care of them quick. And the reason for that is that the cost of preventive maintenance, the crack sealing and that type of work is relatively cheap compared to the cost of rebuilding the street. And I'm talking just for comparison purposes, a preventive maintenance work may cost on the average about $3 to $5 a square yard, while a street that has to be reconstructed, you're looking at $70 a square yard. There's a big difference in price. And so the next thing that I look at is what type of repairs and how do we put a program together. Prior to the 70s, I know we had an oil crisis in 73, another oil crisis in 78. Prior to the crisis of the 70s, asphalt was very cheap. And asphalt is a derivative of the oil industry. It comes out with the crude oil. And back then, oil was very cheap. Gasoline was cheap, and you could pump gas at 29, 30 cents a gallon. So it was very common to build a street and not worry about it until 20 years later or 25 years later when the street failed, you go back and rebuild it. And when those crises happened in 78, all of a sudden the price went up, and I know the government was one of the first started looking at what can we do to keep costs down. That's when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did that study, which is known as the PCI, Payment Condition Index study, and came up with a plan of how to rate the streets to determine what is the best approach to maintain the streets rather than let them fail. And since then, a lot of companies and a lot of associations and industry has adopted that plan and kind of worked at it, but it's all boils down to the same thing. And what has been discovered is that an average asphalt street has about a life of about 20 years, but if you take care of it and you can make the street last 25, 30, 40 years. So using that knowledge, I went back and I said, well, okay, what if we implemented a program the traditional way where you build a street and then do nothing, come back 20 years and rebuild the street. When you do that, then you're having to do 5% of the streets every year. 5% of the streets will run about $22 million a year, which means that we would have to spend $22 million every year from now on just to be able to build the streets that they failed. The picture right now, when we look at the condition of all the streets, 48% of the streets are already gone. It will cost us just under $400 million if we were to do a snapshot picture of what it costs us to repair the streets right now. So to do 5% of the streets every year for the next 20 years, about $22 million, it's and never ending, because you rebuild the street that's the worst condition, goes to the top, and then you take the next group the next year, goes to the top. Well, in 20 years, that first street that you did is back where you started again. So it's never going to end. So then I went back and said, well, let's look at the new approach, what everybody else is doing now. And that's the preventive maintenance approach, where, yes, you do repair some of the streets in the bad condition, but you also spend a little bit of money in keeping those streets that are in good condition good, so that they don't fall down. And I like to use the analogy of a water leak. If you got a pipe that's leaking water and you put a bucket there to capture the water, and every year you scoop the water up with a cup and you go throw it out, and you come back again, do the same thing, and go throw the water out, you're never going to end until you repair that leak. That's what happens with the streets. If you do nothing to the streets, it's just going to go down the natural progression of aging and be there in 20 years again. You got to stop the leak. You stop the leak by, maintaining the streets. Do whatever you need to keep the streets, to prolong the life of the streets. And asphalt, believe it or not, if you keep it clean and you keep it maintained, you can extend the life of asphalt easily 40 years. You can double the life of the street. So if you do that, instead of spending $22 million every year for 20 years to keep up the streets, if you can extend the life or double the life of the street, common sense, the cost of keeping up that street program cuts in half. So you're looking at $11 million a year versus $22 million a year. It makes a lot of sense. Street asphalt, and the reason I focus on asphalt is because 80% of the streets in the city of Port Arthur are asphalt, 20% are concrete. And really, streets that are asphalt, done properly, maintained properly, it's a better street than concrete, in my opinion. I like asphalt because it just has a smoother surface. An asphalt street, when it's done right initially, has a very smooth surface. Asphalt has better friction. A concrete street, when it gets wet, becomes very slippery. It loses its friction real fast. An asphalt street maintains the friction. So there's benefits to asphalt. But anyways, going back, to an asphalt street, when you first lay the street, it's brand new. You look at the street, it's nice and black, very smooth surface. Come back. Sometimes you don't notice that because we drive the street every day, but if you were to step back and then come back a year later, you're going to see that the street starts to fade. And it's no longer that deep black color, but rather it starts turning kind of grayish. And the reason for that is the additives, the petroleum products inside the asphalt begin to evaporate. As the evaporation occurs, the asphalt starts to shrink, and then you start developing little cracks. One of the biggest factors that damages streets is water. So when you have those cracks on the street and water gets in, that water is going to seep in the crack, and when a load comes in, like a vehicle, wheel, and it squeezes down on the water pressure, well, water is going to look for the point of less resistance. And that point of less resistance happens to be the interface between the asphalt and the base underneath. And water starts squeezing it underneath the asphalt. And that's why you see asphalt just pop out. Water got underneath and separated the asphalt from the base. And so in time, those patches of asphalt just pop out, and you start getting those potholes. That's what leads to the deterioration of the asphalt. So anyways, after I put this inventory plan together, I came up with an actual plan, and that's the second book that you have here that doesn't have a label. And I put together a year 1 through a year 5 plan. What I did was assume that we had $6 million to spend this year. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to spend $6 million. Let me put a plan together for year 1 so that we have something to start with. And in doing so, I was able to come up with a plan where I'm proposing 19,405 linear feet of street work. 19,000, it'll be on the first page of the second book. So if you look at the bottom column, I'm looking at $6.2 million. I'm proposing this would treat about 19,405 linear feet of street paving. Now, going back to the percentages, District 1 and District 2 have 33%, about a third of the streets, and District 2 and 3 have or share the other third. So I'll figure, well, how can I distribute the money or distribute the work equally across those districts? And so it was tedious work, but I came up with a plan where of those 19,400 linear feet of streets, this plan would do 6,346 linear feet in District 1, which comes out to 33%. It includes 2,700 linear feet of streets in District 2, which is 14%. 3,326 linear feet of streets in District 3, which is 17%, and 7,011 linear feet of streets, which equals to 36%, that would be District 4. So it kind of resembles the percentage. So I'm equating the amount of streets that are being improved or treated within the district to represent the percentage of streets that are in those districts. So I think that, it's about as close as I could get. The other point that I wanted to point out, if you look at the bottom table, of the $6.2 million, $21,000 I'm proposing for preventive maintenance. And again, preventive maintenance is the crack sealing and little minor, microsurfacing of the streets to keep them in good condition. I'm proposing $21,000, which is less than 0.5%. But that would do about 16% of the streets that we're proposing, 16% of the 19,400 feet. Oh, okay. Then I'm doing, spend $388,000 for rehab work. The rehab work being some overlaying or maybe milled and overlaying. That comes out to 6% of the $6.2 million. And that would cover 51% of the streets in the plan. The remaining $5.8 million, which is 93% of the $6.2 million, is for the reconstruction work, and that covers 31% of the streets. So the plan, when you look at those type of work that we're talking about, 69% of the streets are going to either be done, preventive maintenance or rehab work for about 6% of the $6.2 million. That's 69% of the streets. And the remaining 31% is taking up the other 93% of the $6.2 million. It's a big disparity. And that's why it's so important that we do preventive maintenance, because we eventually want to get to the point where all the streets are in good condition. But we've got to do some of the work. But, the difference is so much, and there's so much difference. And then that's why I'm saying, you give me a budget, we do some reconstruction work, but I'm going to take a pinch of that money and do preventive maintenance. In this case, first year, we're looking at about 6%. So of the $6.2 million, 93% is for reconstruction work, only 6% is for preventive maintenance and rehab work. Now, the type of work that we're looking at, the preventive maintenance, which is the seal coat, the crack sealing stuff that work along that line. Some of it we might be able to do in-house. We got some tar tanks that haven't been used in years. We're going to see if we can refurbish them and get them going. If not, we'll have to bid it out. The overlaying and milling is something that we can do in-house. As a matter of fact, down the list in today's agenda, there is a renewal contract to hire for a contractor to do the overlaying for the streets, for the city. The city does not have the equipment to lay down asphalt. We have equipment to reconstruct some of the streets, do base work, but when it comes to laying down the curb and gutter, we contract that out, and when it comes down to laying the asphalt, we contract that out. So there is an agenda item. Now, the reconstruction work, that one we probably just bid it out simply because of the magnitude and the size of the job. And of course, we want some warranties, and we want the expedited service, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's reasons why we want to do the reconstruction work let out, but we can do some of the other work in-house.
Hold on one second, Mr. Gutierrez. Councilman Doucet, did you need him now, or you want to wait till? Okay. Yeah, please, if you would.
Well, that's pretty much my presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Gutierrez, how many miles of street we have here in the city?
About 340 miles.
340?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 340 and the 19,000, what you plan on doing? You said
19,000 linear feet, which is roughly 3.5 miles.
3.5 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 1/3 of the city streets and 1 in 4
All right.
need to be redone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're talking about $6.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you answered a question that I kept saying over and over, and I'm glad to hear you say that. Although we fixing streets, we got to maintain them, because if you don't maintain them, you're just chasing your tail like a dog. You're going to come back to the end. So you broke that code. But at $6.2 million a year, how long is it going to take for you to get District 1 and District 4 with streets that are fixed at $6.2 million a year?
It would take a long time.
And that is my point.
Yes.
So I like your plan, but the 6.2 just ain't. It just ain't gonna get it. That's something we'll get with the manager, and that's what I keep saying. I said it all along. To try to get these streets in this city fixed, coming out your budget every year, it's going to take a long time. And we're not going to go any faster than what we've been doing at $6.2 million. That is not going to get it done in a fashion that citizens could look around and say, oh, they fixing streets. Okay? The thing that we have to understand in this city, we have to get money to fix streets and infrastructure. And $6 million a year ain't going to get it. So really we need to start looking at how much it's going to take and how much we need to do enough and consistently do it that we can get it accomplished within a reasonable length of time, and we need to go after that money and get it. I mean, that's not your job. That's our job. But the fact is, your job is to get us a plan to make an impact, not piecemeal. We're not going to piecemeal this. 6.2 million ain't no money. If our streets were mainly okay and we didn't have a problem, it would be fine. But after so many years of neglect and so many years of not doing them, we need you to start looking at money that's going to make an impact and bring it to us. And your plan of numbering the streets, I mean, you know, classifying the streets in different level, that's good. That's set priority. But also with your plan that you bring to us, have you looked at which streets we're going to do first? Because, you know, the connectors, I better say I'm going to say the main area, because when I say connector, maybe I'll lose people. But a connector basically is a street that runs through a community or something, whereby everybody coming in will take this street and they'll branch off to wherever they're going to go.
It's called a collector.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure everybody understands. But we should identify the connectors, because when we do a connector, we're going to eliminate the people coming in, driving over 15, 20 blocks of bad street, whereby they only be on 1 or 2 blocks of bad street, because once they come off the connector, they're home. So, you know, I like what I'm hearing, because I think you really got a good understanding. And your knowledge, I could tell that you want to do streets and do it at a grade where we don't just come back and have to do it in 5, 10 years. My only concern is 6.2 million ain't enough.
The cost to do the streets, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be about somewhere around $12 million a year, and that would catch us up in 20 years. To cut the time in half, you basically have to double that money. But I put together in this plan that you just got in a copy, you're going to notice that there is a sheet there where you can increase the cost up or down, and it gives you a time frame. Let me see if I can find it real quick so I can point it out to you.
Okay, well.
But anyways, if you look at it,
I'll look through your book and I'll get it. So you answered the question, but I just want to let you know that we don't need to be going at a pace that's not too much faster than better than what we've been doing. Okay, we need to make an impact, and we look at increasing money, getting more done, and I think that's what citizens want to see. They want to see us making them.
Look for this sheet, and
I'll look through it.
Yeah, look
You got
for
a
it.
page number on it?
it's under Section 8.
Okay, then no
Is it
problem.
under Section 8?
I'll go through
And-
it. We don't have to get in details.
Right.
I
And-
just want to.
right. Okay, one final comment, unless there's more questions. The 5-year plan that I put together, the 6.2, I did it for 5 years. So if you wanted to double the money, you can take year 1, year 2, double up. If you wanted to spend $18 million, take year 1, year 2, year 3, and do it all in one plan.
Well, I don't know what we're going to do. I tell you what, we're going to do more than $6 million, and we're going to move faster than the 20-year rate. 15-year rate. So I think that's what we're looking at. I mean, we're not going to talk about streets anymore. We're going to start fixing streets, and we're not going to fix them over here, and then in 3 or 4 weeks from now they'll be over there. People need to be able to say, I can't go this way. Oh, I can't go that way. You know what we really need to hear on council? We need to hear citizens say, I can't even get around town because they're fixing streets. Everywhere I go, they're fixing streets. That'll be a beautiful sound as opposed to tearing up my car.
Yeah.
All of the streets are bad. And I think that if we do this in a fashion where citizens can actually see us fixing roads all around town simultaneously. I'm not talking about just one group here. I'm talking about simultaneously. That is what I think is going to please citizens, and in that fight or attack, which I'm on board with it. I'm tired driving on them, But I feel that I'm not in a position to have a voice and try to get us to do this in a fashion that we're not doing it at our pace and worrying about trying to keep it down. $6 million we could go and find $6 million every year to put in the budget to fix streets. $6 million. I mean, I'm not a CPA, but I could find $6 million. But we need to put a lot of money into it, and I'll come in and sit with you. But what I'd like to see us develop is a plan whereby you say we could really get something done. I need about this amount of money. And you tell us, and then we find the money. And we can. Thank you.
Councilman Scott.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I'm for getting streets fixed all over the city, but you're looking at 1 in 4, about 62% of the bad streets in those 2 districts. So what kind of plan would you have to try to, when you got an area where you have 17%, you fix, how many streets you're going to fix there? If you fix 2 or 3 streets there, it looks like a great job, but you fix 2 or 3 streets in this district, it don't look like you're doing anything. So how would you prioritize?
No, I'm on the district that have 1/3 of the streets. I'm doing 1/3 of the work there. Yeah, so I'm trying to be fair and equal across the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and District 1 and 4 makes up about 62%.
Yeah, about 1/3 each. So about 2/3 of the work is being done in District 1 and 4.
Okay. So we'll be hearing about streets a long time if we take just $6 million a year.
Like I said, if you look at the plan to accomplish the work in 10 years, you'll be looking at about $21 million a year.
We got to find a way, Mr. Gutierrez. Got to get more money than $6 million. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lewis.
Yeah, appreciate your presentation. I went over to visit with the city manager. I'm hearing the $6.2 million. That's what you estimate that you would need. But what we really need in order to get a substantial amount of money, well, I think this question came up before, and the manager said he's going to get our finance people down here so we can talk about a bond issue. I think $500,000 will pay the debt service on $5 million annually. Okay, that's the last time I think somebody. But we're not going to know how much of we need a large bond issue, and piecemeal $6.2 million a year is not going to get it. But $6 million a year can service the debt on a larger amount of money that we can use to make a real impact. So the manager said to me, he's gonna, in a couple of weeks, we're gonna have the same conversation. He's gonna get the finance people down here, because I went over and asked him, did we have anybody here? There's nobody here from finance. I can ask the question, how much will it take to service the debt on $25-30 million? I know what it is, but what it take this, based on the interest rate, but I know some time ago, a few months ago, when you had this discussion, somebody in finance said that about $600,000 annually will service the debt on $5 million. So you can pretty much estimate how much we can. That's not your job, okay? So your job is to do what you do, okay? Okay. Now, City Manager, you want to comment, share with the rest of the council what we were talking about a minute ago?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. We've already met with our FAs, financial advisors, for short, FA. There are some limitations on how much we can borrow because of the debt service that the water and sewer system owes the general fund. I didn't want to put a wet blanket on this conversation because I really appreciated hearing council members' comments. But I think there are ways that we can skin this cat. So give me a little bit of time. We'll get our financial advisors here. We'll paint the picture that needs to be painted, because you're right. If we're only doing $6 million a year for the next 20 years, it's not going to get it done. And we all want to see that done, because if you get another 20 years, you got to do the same thing all over again. So we've got to come up with a way to be more aggressive about it. I appreciate that. I understand those comments. And when we get the FAs here, they can kind of tell us what our short-term limitations are, and then what our long-term limitations are. And our long-term financial picture is much, much brighter than it is right this second. And I'm talking long-term, just a couple of years. So let's take a look at this on a bigger level with our financial advisors, and I'll get them in here as soon as they're able to come this way, and we'll have those conversations. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez, thank you for the presentation. I have no other lights right now.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we finish unfinished business.